Thank you. I would do that right now. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Um, I think we could go around and maybe we can each share just some of the questions. We can each maybe start with five from one and then see how far we are and then just keep going.
See if we even have that many. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
exactly. Exactly. If
Yeah,
not,
no, I think
no
that's cool.
stress. Okay, I will pull up chapter seven. What do you guys think of the chapters this week?
They're interesting. There's so much.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I see this is only a 40-minute meeting, so I don't want to like take up time, but how was your test?
Who?
The test. How was your test? How did you
Oh,
guys do
oh,
last
gotcha.
week?
Oh, I did okay.
Okay.
I did okay.
I
I
feel like I study so much and I'm like, what?
yeah,
What
I
am I missing?
I'm in the same boat.
Do
I
you
did
know,
okay.
do
Sorry,
you
go
know
ahead.
which concepts you struggled on? Because like, I don't know if you can go back and look or whatever, but if you ever want to share kind of where you're struggling, we can maybe figure out for the next test, like
Mhm.
if there's a pattern, so we know
Yeah,
like what parts to maybe go over a little bit better.
That's
right.
so
I'll have to go back and look. I mean, I didn't fail. I
hmm
got a C, right? But I was like,
hmm
bro, I literally studied.
I know. I'm in the same boat.
Okay, all right.
I'm in the same boat.
I'm totally not bragging, but I got a 90.
You shush. I'm just
I
kidding.
don't,
Good
I
job.
don't mean it that way. This just, it comes so naturally to
Yeah.
me. It's been my family for so long that half the
Yeah.
stuff we're learning, I'm like, oh yeah, I studied that so I could figure out how to help my brother or my son or
Okay.
this person or that person. So, I mean, seriously though, if you ever need to study or just talk it out or just talk concepts so they kind of like settle in the brain, I could talk this stuff till I'm blue in the face.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, I'll have to try and think of, I don't know, questions that I have, but generally it's not till I get to the test and then that's when I'm like, okay, I'm not 100% sure, but studying, I'm like, okay, yes. Here we go.
Yeah,
Got this.
that's why if you can go back through your test, you should be able to kind of see a pattern now that we've done
Yeah.
two, that maybe are you not catching like perspectives? Are you not catching like diagnoses? There's usually kind of something that your brain just doesn't want to wrap around. And then maybe
Yeah.
we can like focus on that for the next test.
That's a good
Um,
point. I'm gonna have to go check on that.
maybe. Don't take my word for it. Just see.
Okay, cool with that. I like that.
All right.
Okay, let's get started here. I think I'll just, maybe we could each just take one question that we had and just take turns. So, like, I'll say one, Deborah can say one, and then keep going.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so one of them, I guess I can just go in order. The first one that I did for chapter seven was describe how mental health professionals typically define trauma and explain what kind of events are definable as traumatic. This was actually really nice for me because, like, kind of how it was saying in the textbook of just people don't have that clear definition. And so it was interesting. I liked it. So basically, it just said, I took it straight from it. It said exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. So that can include also just taking from the book like natural disasters, threatened injury. So like getting mugged or like a robbery, something wherein you're a little bit of danger or more than just a little bit, but where you're in danger, violence, and then even like an unexpected death of a loved one or violent death. I actually had a question about that one for you guys of how does like abuse or like a mental, emotional, any kind of abuse like that, how does that play into like trauma? Like, can you be traumatized from something like that?
I think so.
So I think that's a really good question that actually I was kind of messing with reading this because
Mhm.
that is where the word trauma is kind of loosely used a lot, is in this
Mhm.
emotional abuse. Like, oh, this person is emotionally abusing me. My employer emotionally abuses me, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I was trying to figure out like where does that fit in? From somebody who has PTSD from emotional abuse, I can specifically say that it is still kind of a iffy thing in the clinical field. Typically, a psychiatrist will give the diagnosis for emotional abuse if the emotional abuse I guess in a way makes you feel like your life is being threatened, or maybe so think of it this way. If you're being emotionally abused by a partner who is threatening your livelihood, where you live, your security, um, or making it seem like you may be physically abused, that they may
Mhm.
escalate to that point. All of that does kind of fall into that your life is being threatened kind of
Mhm.
scenario.
And it
Um,
could it be like the life of someone else as well, of like kind of how it's saying or like actual threat? I don't know. I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that emotional abuse can kind of fall into that. I am very surprised that the clinical definition didn't have some kind of emotional or psychological abuse mixed in there, though. That was really surprising to me.
Thank you.
Interesting.
All right, thank you. So
I don't know if I'm right. Please remember
yeah,
that.
no, but the, like I like having everyone's input.
Yeah, it's good to talk about it.
Yeah.
I can go second. And the one that I'm going to share is what is the difference between bereavement and grief? And so what I found is like a bereavement is the state of having lost someone close, like through death, and that's the period of mourning that follows it. And then grief is emotional response to the loss. Um, Feelings range from sadness to anger to disbelief and guilt. So bereavement is the situation and grief is the reaction.
Yeah, I like that. I never realized that they were different. I've heard the words interchangeable. So it was kind of cool to see that, okay, one is external, one is internal, more or less. So that was kind of cool. Um, I can go next, I guess. Okay. Let me pull mine up real quick. So I just kind of dived further down into the book just to grab some that maybe other people weren't answering. Um, so I answered, what role might the immune system play in trauma, stress, and loss? My response was, someone experiencing PTSD and grief will most likely have excess inflammation in the body. We do not yet know if inflammation can be considered a causation or a correlation. Many adverse experiences can cause increased inflammation, which can increase the risk of serious illnesses. So basically, we don't know if increased inflammation means that you're more likely to get PTSD, or if you get PTSD or you have other really any negative experience in your life, and then that causes that increase in inflammation. We don't know which comes first, chicken or the egg.
Mhm.
Interesting.
I write one question is, what role does dissociation play in response to trauma? So I answer with dissociation is a psychological response that some individual experiences following the trauma where they may feel detached from themselves or their surrounding. But the dissociation is considered a coping way to help individuals deal with the overwhelming stress or trauma, allow them to escape from the um, depressed environment.
Yeah, great answer.
Okay, let me see here. Another one. Um, what is post-traumatic growth? Oh, and what predicts post-traumatic growth? I forgot to answer that second. Okay, whoops. But I thought this was a really interesting concept. something really interesting. So it's basically just post-traumatic growth refers to the growth that happens in a person after healing from a traumatic experience. So as it explained in the textbook, it's not just them returning to their baseline, but they had some kind of development in some way, where they were able to maybe improve something above that baseline. Um, and I thought that was really cool. I thought that's really interesting. I commented in the textbook of how it's like yin and yang, about how there's goodness and darkness, lightness and darkness, badness, and there's something positive. So like even with all of crazy traumatic experiences, in some cases you are able to see that growth and have that growth afterwards. It might not be immediate. It probably won't not be immediate, but after time and after healing, you can see that growth.
I like that.
I like that too. That's good. Okay. All right. I asked, according to DSM-5 and ICD-11, what is prolonged grief disorder? So the answer is PGD, or prolonged grief disorder, is a condition where grief symptoms persist and cause functional impairment for an extended period, beyond typically beyond 12 months for adults and 6 months for children. The DSM-5 and ICD-11 criteria focus on intense longing, sorrow, and emotional pain related to the loss interfering with the individual's normal functioning.
That was awesome. Let me pull mine back up. I realized I'm next. Sorry. Um, let's see. I did what personality characteristic, yeah. Let's try that again. What personality characteristics tend to correlate with poor response to trauma? Those who typically have negative emotionality, what they refer to as NEM, people who tend to experience anger, anxiety, and depression. Also, those who have a cold or domineering disposition. This might be because they have trouble maintaining, I didn't actually put a word there, trouble maintaining a social support. That's sad to think about. Cold people just might have more PTSD.
Something.
I have the question on what is the significant role of social support in coping with grief? So I answer social support plays a critical role in coping with grief by providing emotional comfort and practical help, and also help the individuals feel not that much isolated, and promotes the resilience and allow the people to feeling more safe. Mm.
What are some potential explanations for the higher prevalence of PTSD among women compared to men? So with this one, so the trauma that women generally face are somewhat more stigmatized, which makes it more difficult to find support or help. And then the experiences are also generally more, they're prolonged and more intense experiences, from what I could gather. I wanted to know, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Like, do you guys think anything else like plays into that, or also just anxiety in general? Women seem to be are much more likely to have it.
I am curious if it's women are more willing to talk about it,
Mhm.
right? Like, what are we getting an accurate representation of the whole population, right? Or are women just more willing to talk about it?
I can definitely see that because I don't know, just I feel like women are more likely to open up with their friends, especially like with the emotional connection of having women as a friend, having a woman as a friend, you are more likely to just more, I don't know how to explain it, just like emotionally available. And so I feel like that would definitely play a factor.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one was interesting because I'm also taking kind of like a social work class. And this question was actually part of what we were doing in my other class. So it's what is reactive attachment disorder and disinhibited social engagement disorder? And what population are these disorders reserved for? So reactive attachment disorder is so these are reserved for children and children who have experienced severe neglect or inconsistent caregiving. And so RAD, or reactive attachment disorder, is a failure to form healthy emotional relation attachments, resulting in withdrawn behavior. And then DSED, or disinhibited social engagement disorder, is like inappropriate relation, like so indiscriminate social interactions and lack of caution with strangers. Um, these disorders, I already read that. Okay. So it comes from childhood trauma, lack of stable caregivers. Yeah. Inability to form a attachment at the appropriate age affects you forever.
Yeah. It's interesting how that can go like either way of like no or yes, be friends with random strangers.
Right. I was actually telling in my other class, I had a Zoom right before this, and I was talking about that. I have a niece who was adopted from foster care, and my husband is a big dude. He's 6'4". He's a big guy. Well, the first time she ever met him, she came and like climbed in his lap and wanted to buddy with him. And I was like, oh, that's not normal, right?
Yeah.
And now reading this, I was like, oh, that is that DSED. That's so interesting because like uh, he's a big teddy bear, but she had never met him before,
Hmm.
right? So interesting.
I wonder what makes it go, like what determines which way they're gonna go.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of those, is it this class? It was probably another class a few years back that did the, what is it, ocean, openness, extroverted, introverted, any of that. Do anybody know what I'm talking about?
Was it like the personality test?
It's a type, yeah, it's one of there's lots of different types, but this was one famous guy or say famous group that developed a personality theory, and it went ocean was the acronym, and it was like openness and all these different like whatever, and you could be like on one end of the scale or the other. I hope I'm getting that right. Um but yeah, that would be my assumption, is that that's what makes it go like one way or the other. It kind of just depends on like, are you naturally more of an open person, more of a closed person? Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Um, that would kind of predetermine, well, are you going to isolate and pull away, which would normally be maybe depression in your future, or are you going to cling to somebody else and get super attached, which would probably be anxiety as that child grows up. But we'll see. Um, anyway, yeah, somebody in my group on my book made the comment, could autism and these attachment disorders, could they kind of be comorbid or go along with each other? And we were kind of going back and forth between some people saying yes, some people saying no, um, which led a whole debate in a whole nother group of mine. But anyway, um, but I was kind of making the point that, I mean, special needs kids tend to be in the foster system, tend to be more neglected. All these statistics just kind of say that they put there's, yeah, there's usually more difficult situations there. And so I could see how they go together.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's fascinating.
I'm next to answer a question. Um, All right, how do I pronounce this guy's name? Describe Horowitz, short-term dynamic therapy of stress syndromes. What debates have occurred over its research status? I have a very broken answer here. Let me try. It's a 12-session psychodynamic therapy for PTSD. Um, it includes 5 stages: initial awareness of trauma, denial and numbness, intrusive thoughts, working through the trauma, and finally acceptance. Um, and then what was the second part? What debates have occurred over its research status? There's debate over this therapy's research, as some people feel there isn't enough evidence to fully confirm its effectiveness and validity. Yeah, I need to redo that answer a little bit better, but that's the general idea.
My question is, how does stress differ with trauma? I write, trauma is associated with the extreme life-threatening event, while stress is more like general responses to the challenge we will face in daily. Yes.
Okay. I think just for sake of time, we can go to the other, we can go to chapter 8 and keep going.
So I sadly have not answered a single thing on that one, but
Okay, then don't even.
I'll wing it if I can.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. But yes, you can wing it. I feel like you could wing it. I feel like you know what you're talking about. Okay, let me see here. Um, some of them are really interesting. I'm gonna go. Okay, I'll just do the first one. Okay. So what is dissociation? What is a somatic complaint? How do they differ? So with dissociation, it's more like detachment from reality, from experiences, from yourself. So it's kind of like a state of mind, I guess you could say. And then with somatic complaint, that is when someone is like feeling physical things. So I feel like dissociating is more mental. I mean, they're both mental, but mental and physical sides of things. So there's physical symptoms with underlying psychological connection.
I write, what is the identity of confusion in dissociation? So the answer is identity confusion is a form of disassociation while an individual experiences the confusion or difficulty in recalling their own identity. Mm.
Let's see. Okay, so I have define somatization and how is that different from somatic complaints? So somatization is a process of experiencing and expressing psychological distress through physical symptoms. It differs from the somatic complaints because it involves a broader, often chronic pattern of physical symptoms due to psychological factors, whereas somatic complaints are individual, isolated symptoms that may or may not be tied to a broader psychological condition. Straight from the book.
That was awesome. I did not know this much about somatic symptoms.
I know.
I
This is pretty cool. I wonder where hypochondria fits into this. Has anyone, I haven't read this chapter yet, so has anyone seen that yet?
Briefly, I not enough to say anything.
Yeah, because it seems like it would kind of fit in there somewhere, but it's not
Yeah,
really, I
yeah.
don't know, because it's not,
Definitely talked about. I just can't remember specifics.
I think
um,
we're seeing it, but yeah, there's a lot.
I will wait till I read the chapter and see if I can find it. So I will just quickly do a super fast of number 4, name and define various DSM and ICD disorder, dissociative, blah. Yeah, dissociative,
You got it. You got it.
I can't say this word. I've always struggled with it. Um, so there's a whole table here. There's so many. This is like crazy. There's dissociative, I said it, amnesia, and then of course the ones that they talked about in the earlier chapter of derealization, and then dissociative identity, and then it looks like everything else is somatic. There's a lot of different ones. And so amnesia refers to having not remembering what happened. So either right after a traumatic event, not remembering the event that just occurred, or could even be years later, not remembering the event, can even be not remembering days before the event, days after the event, can be pretty much any kind of amnesia associated with kind of blocking out what happened in that situation. I don't see it described here, but I wonder where with a lot of PTSD, you can have memory problems going into the future as well. So somebody with PTSD may have a traumatic event, say at age 15, and then way into adulthood, kind of have other parts missing throughout life. I wonder if that it fits in there. I can't tell from the little bit I'm reading. But anyway, depersonalization and identity, I don't know enough to describe those. So there we go. There's my answer.
Yes, that's good. Okay, I'm really sad that I couldn't get my Zoom to get my other email so it could do for more time because I love talking and discussing. So I think for the last little bit, I wanted to ask you guys of like, what are you guys thinking of the book? How's it going for you guys? Things that you're liking or not liking or anything like that.
So
Um,
I bought the book.
Oh,
I
I
was
was talking
like,
about
oh, I thought
the
you
other
meant
one.
this. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
where did you
I'm
get
sorry.
that?
Guys, I bought it on Amazon because I was like, I I can't keep feeling like I don't know what the heck is going on, right?
Yeah,
And so I'm old, and so a hard copy is my jam.
that's so cool.
Anyways,
I think
anyways,
you noticed that actually though.
I'm so jealous. I wish I had done that sooner. Oh my
Yeah.
I bought it after this last test because I literally
Um,
was like, what? Hmm. Anyways, the book, sorry.
yeah.
Um, I had to read the whole thing because I couldn't, I have a hard copy of that too.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't. I needed to make sure she was okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
So,
haven't quite I have one more chapter left. So it's kind of more a little more chill. It's kind of wrapping up.
yeah.
I'm just super impressed with her, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, she's just incredible. She's so strong, she's so smart, and she just was able to get through all of that. I don't have words for how incredible it is.
So I know I talk a lot about my mental health disorders, so I'm really open. I'm sorry. I really am.
No, I enjoy all your comments, so please share.
I actually had to stop reading it. I got about halfway through and I love the book. I love it so much. Like I was becoming obsessive with trying to read it because I really love the way she talks about everything. Um it's just incredible. But I was doing audiobook. It's kind of the only way I have time to really read. So I do audiobook while I'm working, and her first person perspective, especially talking about the compulsive thoughts and the overthinking and the ruminating and stuff like that. I started having one of my own personal breaks that I have every blue moon, and had to go see my therapist and say that I can't read this book anymore.
Yeah, oh my
It
God.
got
I can
bad.
imagine that with like listening to it
Yeah.
as well. That would
First
be
person perspective, it's
uh,
not good.
yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, it's an amazing book and she's an awesome person.
Yeah.
And what accomplished in her life. It's just like so cool. So yeah.
I am like proud of her for like coming to the conclusion that she does need what she
Mhm.
needs, right? Like sometimes we need help.
Mhm.
And just telling ourselves we're strong, we can get through it and overcome it is eh? No, that's not true. We need help. That's why we have these resources that we've been given, like, you know what I mean? Amazing, intelligent people, medicines, like they're here for a reason. Let's take advantage of what we have because we have more now than they've ever had. We've never, you know what I mean? The technology and the advancements we have now are amazing. Take advantage of them. So,
It made me really sad, like throughout the book, when she would say like it was kind of her fault because she thought like everybody had these thoughts and she just wasn't strong enough. She just wasn't good enough to like hide them. And
yeah,
that made me so sad. And like just with her experiences of how drugs are bad, don't use them, and it's just all the different variables to make it how it played out. But how at the end, exactly what you're talking about, like she was able to accept it, and like some days were better than others, but at the end she was able to accept it and get the help that she needed. So it's a
yeah.
journey, a very big journey. I was gonna ask something else. I can't remember.
I was gonna add to that, and not to open a
Ah,
huge debate in the last 5 minutes,
no, please
but
do.
it's been something that has been on my mind so much throughout that whole book of, she's, and again, I've only gotten to about the middle part, so I'm using what I assume the rest of the book is gonna be.
Mhm.
Um, but so correct me if I'm wrong, but in the whole like first half, it talks about, I mean, look at how much she did unmedicated.
Yeah, yeah.
We could call what she has unsupported, although she has these different types of therapy. She had her Miss Lady, who I can't remember her name right now, Miss Jones or something.
Jones, yeah.
Um, who clearly was, I mean, daily therapy, like who gets that? Um, clearly she's supported, but ultimately that just wasn't really the right kind of support ultimately. So I'm going to call it unsupported.
Mhm.
So unmedicated, unsupported, yet she finishes a degree at Oxford and Yale and all of these crazy things that she's doing. And so it makes me wonder, what would her life have been if they put her on meds in her teens? Would she have accomplished the same amount? What if she had been told that very, very first time that she started, like, what was it, early teens or even earlier, that she started having a couple things that made it seem like something was off?
Mhm.
What if they had medicated? What if they told her, "Oh, you have anxiety or you have this and you're not going to be able to do as good because of this," or "It's okay, you don't have to finish your homework because we understand like why you can't."
Yeah,
Would
that's
she have accomplished the same amount of stuff? So it's just an ongoing question that I think a lot of, this field is arguing, and I'm always thinking it.
Mhm.
Where's that beautiful line between giving support or enabling,
yeah.
supporting, helping them do their best, or letting them get away with less than they really could accomplish? So it's a tough one.
It is
Yeah,
a tough one.
I have no idea. But
I know, I don't think there is
I
an answer.
didn't even think about that of like if she would have been able to what she did and just like how the different experiences in her life led her to where she is at the end of the book, you know? And I think I didn't think about that. That's really cool.
I want to say it does
I
talk
don't know.
about like I don't know if it's that like after the book is over and she's kind of still talking, but it does talk about like early diagnosis is is the best way.
And that's what a lot I've heard that from so many people. I mean, I wasn't diagnosed with anything until my like early 30s, until well into adulthood. And so I connect a lot with other adults and older women who say, if only I'd been diagnosed earlier, if only this had happened earlier. But my question is, does our society, does our community, do we as people, do we really support those with mental illnesses, or do we enable them? So just because you get the diagnosis doesn't mean you're getting supported. It
Right.
means you know what's wrong.
Yeah.
And this, okay, and this is, forgive me if I'm not like on the same track as you, but students with like ADHD, I can't because I have ADHD, and I hear that all day long. I can't because I'm like, brother, you can though. That's not,
You might be different, but you still can do it. It's
yeah,
just a
and
little
that's,
different than everybody else, and that's okay.
and one student specifically, I'm like, man, I want to smack your mother because this is where it's coming. Like listened to her mother, and I'm like, oh, you are not incapable. You're intelligent. You can do these things, but you're being told you have an out because of a diagnosis.
Mhm.
Yep. It's a
Yeah.
really good example. That is an incredible example.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, it's not fair. Like, that's not it. You're not broken. Right? So,
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to bring up a deep debate, but it's
Oh,
something
that's
I love
exactly
to
what I'm
consider.
here for.
right? No kidding. Like, let's talk about it. So,
No, I love it.
Well, coming from a mom with 4 special needs kids, the only thing I can say to answer a child who says, I can't because I have ADHD, I try to use what my therapist has always said, love my therapist. It's not I can't, it's I need so that I can. Um, and so that's kind of what I try to do with my kids. I'm not always successful, but I try to do with myself of, okay, I can't sit here and read 2 chapters of this darn book in like 2 days, or barely even for what I have, but I can listen to an audiobook. So, all right, I'm done. I'll get off my stool now. Sorry.
I love it. Oh, it just says less than 1 minute. So
all
I guess
right. Tell me
okay.
what you just said. I need so I can. I need so I can.
Yeah. It's not that I can't. I need X, Y, or Z so that I can do what I
Okay.
need to do.
Okay.
Love it.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you guys so much. I love our discussions. Thank you for contributing everything.
Thank you for leading. I appreciate you
Of
guys.
course.
All right.
Oh, who wants to lead next time? I forgot. I don't
I
know how
think
much
it's
time we have.
my turn.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.